For me, the skill of learning how to learn is like a cheat code in life. It speeds everything up, your ability to acquire skills, knowledge, and also the capacity to reach goals by learning along the way. The ability to understand quickly, to grasp things rapidly in a world where we are overloaded with information. For me, it's truly the essential skill because it unlocks all the other skills. Just like in RPGs, it's really the skill that unlocks everything. And honestly, when you truly master it, it's almost like cheating. And as it happens, when I was a child, people always told me I was like a sponge. I had an ability to learn very quickly whatever was shown to me. And for a long time, I thought I just had a natural talent, that it was something I was born with and all that. But there are areas where I learn very slowly and I'm not good at all. Actually, I also realized that I had developed, both on my own and with the help of those around me, a process that I still use today and that I'm going to share with you, pass on to you. So if today you want to speed up your learning without being overwhelmed by too much information, without spending billions of years on courses, books, or endless skill building, etc., to really be able to learn something, this is going to make a huge difference. And also, if you're curious like me and you love learning, you'll see that what I'm going to share with you will also help, I truly believe, to relieve your mental load, because the problem very often is information overload. Welcome, my name is Yuan Yangting. If you don't know me, I'm 31 years old, and since 2008, yes, I've been self-taught. While I was studying, I took the plunge, and it's true that ever since then, I've been sharing what I learn and experimenting. And it's true that sharing what I learn has been the best way for me to quickly develop new skills. Because yes, I'm getting straight to the point here. When you share what you learn, it pushes you to think things through, it pushes you to experiment, it pushes you to think differently. It's different to have expertise and skill than it is to know how to pass them on. And being able to pass them on requires you to reach another level of expertise and skill. When I practiced martial arts for a long time, and I started when I was highly ranked to teach classes to children and students myself. Well, I realized that what I was trying to do as a movement and what it took to teach it were two different things. So in the end, I realized that I actually had to relearn what I understood, what I had acquired, and my reflexes, so that I could then break them down and pass them on. And on top of that, it allowed me to go much further in what I had mastered. It raises your level of mastery. The best example I can give you is that today, a lot of people think I'm comfortable with public speaking, whether it's at conferences, I give a lot of talks, or when I make content like this for you. People think that, I'm at ease when it comes to communication, and I think that today, yes, I do have a certain ease. But let me tell you, I come from far. Originally, I was an extremely shy child. For me to speak up, first I had to allow myself to do it, and others had to allow me as well, and it was very difficult. I was afraid to talk to strangers. I also had this big problem that in groups I was pretty much withdrawn. Sometimes I was even invisible. And so actually the very first thing I had to learn, especially when I had to develop my business and really work on projects where I had to sell, was the ability to communicate. And you don't have a choice. From the moment you have a business, you can't avoid selling. The good news, even though I talk about it in other content, is that you can sell even if you're an introvert. And in fact, it's actually an advantage. But I'm telling you this because it's what I've studied the most. When I wanted to get into entrepreneurship, what I studied the most, because everything related to marketing, everything related to finance, everything about, let's say, business management, etc. That wasn't too difficult for me. Even accounting and all that, I understood very quickly, even in the classes I had at business school. On the other hand, actually communicating, selling, that was a nightmare for me. So I started watching quite a few series. The Mentalist, Lie to Me, shows about decoding, nonverbal cues, all that stuff about really understanding people's tics, being able to identify all that, because I told myself I really need to develop my influence. Back then, I even created a blog called Pro Influence. Well, it's still called that because it still exists. And with Pro Influence, I was educating myself like crazy about influence. I was reading as many books as possible, and the first thing I did every time I learned something new was to experiment with it, try it out, and then share it on the blog. So I talked about how to detect lies, sales techniques, negotiation techniques, and so on, because that's what I was practicing the most myself. And since I blogged about it almost every day for 3, 4, 5 years, keeping up a good pace, actually it pushed me to master this skill because I was also learning copywriting, online sales, and how to write sales pages. So naturally, by learning it myself and also teaching it to others, it took me to another level. So today, if you want to learn faster, honestly, don't hesitate to share what you're learning. If you've read something interesting, if you've learned a skill, pass it on. And besides, nowadays, I think it's really cool that we can share knowledge. I do this in different formats on social media, on YouTube, etc. others do it too. And I think it's valuable because we can share knowledge and experience. And you have no limits to do so, but it can also be within your own circle. So, the first piece of advice I give you, no matter what you're learning, get used to, yes, just like that, sharing it. Well, of course, here I just shared a straightforward piece of advice like that, but there are also steps before this. Still, I wanted to start with it because this one is too often forgotten. And since I know that people often don't stay until the end of the content, I wanted to make sure you at least got this one. Next, the second thing that is very, very, very important, this isn't necessarily in a logical order, these are just practices I'm sharing with you, is also, and it might seem obvious when I say it, but learn things that interest you. Because I believe that if you try to learn subjects that don't interest you or things that bore you, you won't be motivated. So at the very least, go towards things that interest you. As I said, we are eternal students, but what's the point of learning things that will actually be useful to you personally? Nothing. And when I say nothing, I really mean things that make no sense to you because they won't be useful to you professionally, etc. Because there are always big debates about whether what we learn in school is useful or not. Personally, I think that there's also learning, and then there's learning how to learn. There's also logic and the way of thinking, of training your brain. All of that is important. But what I want to tell you here is that it's still better to be interested. And I think that, like a lot of multipotentialites, when I dive into something and decide to learn a new discipline, I go all in, really all in, but only for a very short period of time, and I'll devour the subject, understand all the codes. And that's a real shortcut. To learn super fast, when I discover something new, I go all in, all in, all in. The most recent example I have is padel, the racket sport that's really trendy right now, super trendy even. And actually, well, I joined a business group around it and started playing, and honestly, I had never played it in my life before. I played for the first time, and since I had already played tennis, I did have some basics and all that. But to really understand it, well, what I did is I learned very quickly, and today I can hold my own against people who have been playing for 3 years or more, who practice all the time, while for me it's still just a hobby. And actually, that's because as soon as I started, I immediately tried to grasp what the essence of the game is, what the rules are. Okay, where am I good and where am I not so good? How, in this game, can I use my strengths? Then really understanding through practice, practicing, going to play regularly, but not just playing for the sake of playing while analyzing, getting advice. Asking people with experience, why are you positioning yourself there? Why did you do that? Why are you standing on that side? Why did you return it like that? And having game situations, and when I mess up, correcting myself. So actually, it's really about surrounding yourself with people who are more experienced and practicing as well. And for me, there's something I really like when I'm learning a new skill, especially in sports or things like that. It's to go train with people who are better than me, even in business, because I think that too often the mistake a lot of people make, and I don't really like this, is that sometimes beginners are only left with other beginners. It's fine for practicing, but after a while, if you don't play with people who are better than you, you're not going to progress much faster. So very often that's what I did. I always did that when I was doing karate. I would train with the higher ranked people. When I played soccer, I wanted to train with the older players. And when I played basketball, it was the same. Everything I've practiced, including entrepreneurship, every time I try to meet people who are further along in business. Because actually, if you're surrounded by people who are better than you, you'll accelerate your learning speed. And I really believe that's, well, yes, it's a cheat code because in fact there are plenty of fields where I've reached the level of people who've been practicing for 10 years while I've maybe only done it for, let's say, 1 or 2 years. There are even areas where it's just 6 months because actually I did nothing but that obsessively, and I went online to watch games, understand the rules, look for advice. I immerse myself in it morning, noon, and night, which means I'm going to progress much faster. I'm not interested in starting something and then saying, well, I'll do a little bit and see how I progress. When I want to learn something, I go all in. When I learned video, I made videos every day. When I learned copywriting, I wrote sales copy every day. When I learned storytelling, I wrote stories every day. I'm not saying to do everything at once. I'm just saying that at some point, if you want to learn something, you need to sit down and focus. You need to tell yourself, I'm learning this skill. But you have to practice every day. And I repeat, do you want to learn piano? You have to play every day. So actually, that's also how you learn faster. Actually, I think there's also something really simple. Practice faster and surround yourself more quickly with people who are better than you. So really, it's about sharing what you learn, repeating it, fully committing to the discipline, seeing everything that's being done in that field, and on top of that, surrounding yourself with more advanced people. Just by doing that, you absorb things much faster. And the last point for me is also a mindset. And the good news is, it's accessible to everyone. It's simply about also using the lever of curiosity with the tools we have today. Today, you're lucky to have artificial intelligence, which allows you to absorb tons and tons of data much faster. Let me explain. Today, with tools like NotebookLM, ChatGPT, Claude, or others, for example, you can feed them a lot of resources, especially NotebookLM, which can handle YouTube video resources, PDF documents, and so on. Notes you have, and they can provide you with a very strong summary. I know that very recently I did some research on ADHD, and there is a huge amount of documentation in English, French, and so on. And actually, what I did, because I wanted to do some programming, I might talk to you about it. You can let me know if you're interested. I was actually programming an assistant for my clients who have ADHD, and I'm working with someone who specializes in it, and I wanted to add that to productivity because it's not something I personally experience. So I had to get into it, to learn about it, to do some research. What I did was I absorbed as much documentation, studies, etc. as I could. I put everything into AIs, made a big package, and synthesized it all to understand the sources, the studies, the information, the practices, and so on. And I was even able to develop practices thanks to that. So if I had done this the old-fashioned way, it would have taken me months. I did this in just a few days, doing a bit of research each day. I could have done it in a single day if I had really focused. And that's the thing. Today, you have the opportunity, and we all have the opportunity to use these tools. I'm not saying you should replace reading, educating yourself, and watching, because taking the time to engage with long-form content is not the same as just reading summaries. That's not what I'm saying. By the way, I made another video about how to use AI to read and learn faster. Go check it out if you're interested. I'll put the link in the description. And as I was saying, the idea here is more about realizing that today we have tools, I can get book recommendations, and so on. Isn't it interesting to try to synthesize things? Because I believe that the biggest problem we have today, the thing that slows down learning the most, is the paradox that there is too much information. So, to find the right information. And what's great is that even when we have an AI assistant, sometimes I tell it, I want to learn this subject, give me quizzes, give me exercises, some practice. And so I use AI to help me with that. But honestly, I talk about this in detail in the video on how to use AI to learn faster. So go check it out. So here, what I wanted to tell you is that, as you can see, if you're expecting ultra complicated things or revolutionary ideas, actually, that's not it. If you want to learn 10 times faster, you have to do what most people don't dare to do. Share what you're learning, because often, well, we don't really feel like doing it. We don't see the point. Honestly, even if no one listens to you or it's just one person, do it. Even if you start a blog, who cares? Or a YouTube channel that gets 3 views, it doesn't matter. Really do it. It's a good practice and it deepens your thinking. As soon as you learn something, share it. You'll remember it better. Then, being able to really develop this habit to always fully commit yourself to something, you say, if I'm learning this, I go all in. I'm learning a new sport, I'm learning a new skill, etc. I practice, and I surround myself with people who are better than me. Because when you train alone, the problem is that sometimes you can't see your own flaws. You don't get feedback, whereas with more experienced people, you'll get great feedback. And the last point, as I mentioned, is to use the leverage of the tools we have today, whether it's to find information, filter it, synthesize it, and have it as an assistant to cross-reference things, challenge yourself with skill or knowledge tests or best practices, or best, and that's an extraordinary advantage. And if you want to go further, there's the FAST method for learning faster, a program to help you learn much more quickly, which I developed with lots of best practices and tools that I recommend to you. Go check it out if you're interested. I'll put the link below. And as I said, today, the real game and the real skill that will make the difference is the ability in how to learn. Because we are eternal students. Thank you all. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you very soon.